Simulan mong abutin ang iyong pangarap na magbibigay dangal sa iyong bukas. Ang suliranin, hindi laging nandyan, dapat mong harapin. Kami iyong kasama sa bawat takin, magkaakbay nating lulutasin. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, ang boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, ikaw lagi ang bida. Ang mga aral ay ginintuangatin ng bawat guro na siyang gagabay sa iyong pagkamulat. Naway umukit ito sa iyong isipan, maging mapanuri, sundin ng wasto at nararapat. Kagandahang asal ang ipakita, ipadama ang pusong may malasakit. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, ang boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, ikaw lagi ang bida. Sakali mang tayo'y subukin ng unos, ating haharapin ng walang takot. Sasamahan ka ni Fernan at Dino, ang bagong barkada mo. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, edukasyon mo'y sigurado na. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa FerNanDino Teens TV, edukasyon mo'y sigurado na.
FerNanDino Teens TV.
A blessed day, FerNanDino Teens. Welcome to FerNanDino Teens TV. This is Ma'am Vicky, your 21st century literature teacher for today. Today's squad goal includes the following. For you to be able to recognize speculative fiction and its subgenre. Explain speculative fiction using the elements of fiction. And analyze a sample speculative fiction. If we accomplish these squad goals, we will be able to actually enlighten Fernan and Dino, who are curious and loaded with what-if questions. Somehow, many among you have negative attitudes to the topic literature. Why? Because you find it difficult, something out of your league, something that's not interesting, something that is difficult to understand. Worse, something that is boring. Today, in this lesson, we will try to put it into a brand new light, where you'll be able to find literature as something relatable, something that is easy to understand, something that is enjoyable, and something that is fun. Why? Because gone are the days when literature is only confined to what is classical. Remember those works written by the great minds Homer, Shakespeare, Dante, Poe, and the likes. Let's get something out of the way. Literature used to be something that is oral, Do you still recall riddles, folk songs, proverbs that were handed down to our generation by our forefathers by words of mouth? And then there was the interminable reading that we needed to do because literature was written. Do you still recall the Divine Comedy of Dante, where we needed to go to the Inferno and then to the Purgatorio before we were able to climb to Paradiso? Today, literature is something that is visual. Are we now trying to claim that the movies we had watched and intend to watch in the future are part and parcel of what literature is? The answer to that question is an astounding yes. Movies are now a part of what literature is all about. Before we proceed with this lesson, let us then try to play a game. You will need to simply guess the title of the following films. The first item is a 21st literature work released in 2015. It is a science fiction survival film directed by Ridley Scott. The 2011 novel by Andy Weir served as the screenplay, adapted by Drew Goddard. It depicts an astronaut's lone struggle to survive on Mars after being left behind, and all efforts to rescue him and bring him home to Earth. Give your answer before the television in 3, 2, 1. If you said The Martian, then your answer is correct. Our next item is a 1993 American science fiction adventure film directed by no less than Steven Spielberg. The film is set on the fictional island of Isla Nublar, located off Central America's Pacific coast near Costa Rica. There, wealthy businessman John Hammond and a team of genetic scientists have created a wildlife park of the extinct dinosaurs. When industrial sabotage leads to a catastrophic shutdown of the park's power facilities and security precautions, a small group of visitors and Hammond's grandchildren struggle to survive and escape the perilous island. Your answer? Indeed, the classical Jurassic Park. Ready for the third item? This time we have a 1999 science fiction action film written and directed by the Wachowskis. It stars Keanu Reeves and it depicts a dystopian future in which humanity is unknowingly trapped inside a simulated reality created by intelligent machines to distract humans while using their bodies as energy source. When computer programmer Thomas Anderson, under the hacker alias Neo, uncovers the truth, he is drawn into a rebellion against the machines along with other victims. The answer? Yes, The Matrix. Fourth and final item is a 2019 film that follows the story of an ambitious science prodigy who uses her prowess and capabilities to create time machine in order to save her brother who has been killed by a police officer. As she tries to alter the events of the past, she will eventually face the perilous consequences of time travel. Your answer? See You Yesterday. Could it be possible that you tell someone to see him or her yesterday? What we usually say is, see you later, see you tomorrow. So, what do all those films have in common? They are all product of the writer's imagination. Therefore, they are all called fiction. But there is such thing as realistic fiction, and this is what we are going to find out right after we come back after a break.
FerNanDino Teens TV.
Welcome back, FerNanDino teens. Are you excited to know the answer to the question, when can we say that a literary work falls under realistic fiction? For us to be able to answer this question, let us enlighten you as to what realistic fiction is. This is a genre consisting of stories that could have actually occurred to people or animals in a believable setting. Such stories must resemble life, and they must depict our world and our society. To exemplify, who could ever forget John Green's The Fault in Our Stars? This best-selling novel deals with friendship, teen romance, but also of loss and death. Still remember Hazel Grace, who suffers from cancer at 17? She was practically pushed by her parents to attend a cancer support group where she meets Isaac, who becomes her friend later. And then came Augustus Waters, who becomes her love interest later on. But sadly, the young man dies before the end of the story. Put in that situation, we could actually be asking a lot of what-if questions, like what if the young lovers never met? But we could actually also be confronted by other what-if questions, like what if we had a time machine? Where would you want to go? Back to the past or into the future? What if a killer virus wiped out much of the human race? Isn't coronavirus doing exactly just that right now? Another what-if question is, what if vampires were real? Then we will become a part of Twilight, right? And then we also have, what if we live on Mars? So remember the movie, The Space Between Us? And then finally, what if aliens came to Earth? Will we go with them? What do you think will they look like? What if questions are doors to what is known as speculative fiction, because speculative fiction is almost always confronted by a what if question. But isn't all fiction speculative? Doesn't all fiction begin with what if? Let's try to draw a borderline. What is real against what is not real? Then we will be branding what is real under realism and brand what is not real under speculative fiction. Take note, in a speculative world, the laws that are followed, however, are not the same laws that we follow in our world. Take for instance, if I am fuming mad at a guy and I would decide to actually push him in a nest where some alligators are waiting, and I find thrill in doing so, is that speculative? Not at all. Put in the same situation, however, I push a guy I am mad at in a nest filled with mutant alligator sharks. Is that speculative? Definitely yes. Let's go a little bit technical. Speculative fiction is an umbrella genre encompassing narrative fiction with supernatural as well as futuristic element. The supernatural element leads us to speculative fiction being unlimited in possibilities. And the futuristic element leads us to believe that speculative fiction must be seen as the roadmap to tomorrow. Put in another way, speculative fiction involves a vision of the future or portrays the supernatural. Do you want to understand speculative fiction deeper and better? Let's go to the subgenres of this particular type of fiction. Starting off with science fiction, which I guess you are more familiar with as sci-fi. These stories contain imagined technologies that do not exist in our world. The films we cited earlier are all examples of sci-fi. Plus, any story about time travel, aliens, and even robots are examples of this. Science fiction are usually speculative, but not always as such. Then let's go to another one. This time we have fantasy as another subgenre. These stories that include magic, the supernatural, mythical creatures, all that do not have grounding on what is real are called fantasy. Think of Harry Potter or The Lion King. They are not science-based, but they are fantasy. Third subgenre are horror, and these are those that intend to frighten, to scare, to disgust, or to startle the readers by inducing terror, shock, or fear. Horror as a subgenre are about emotions. They are about negative emotions being pushed to the extremes. Fear, yes, fear, but also anger, disgust, lust, and other negative emotions. Then we have apocalyptic fiction. These are stories that contain incidents that happen before and during a huge tragedy that actually wipe out a significant portion of the world's population. The story centers on character trying everything that they could in order to stay alive. So if you encounter a story that has something to do with people running away from zombies or simply running away from a plague, these are examples of apocalyptic fiction. What do we have next? We have post-apocalyptic fiction. What are these? By the very prefix that is used, post means after. These are those stories that happen after an apocalyptic event. And they contain stories that focus on survivors trying their might in order to navigate their new circumstances. One example is Bird Box, and stories that would contain characters who are trying to emerge from a global nuclear holocaust is another example. Coming up next is a genre that you are very familiar with, and these are the superhero fiction. Remember Superman and Iron Man? Locally, you have Darna. These are those that contain heroes with superpowers, and they must be costumed, and they had to battle it out against super villains. Coming up next is utopian fiction. These are stories that present a world that is ideally perfect in all the aspects of the society. Then we have dystopian fiction, exactly the opposite because of the this, which means not. In this particular genre, there is nothing that is perfect because there is a dystopian reality where people are afraid to go out of their world, and the condition is somehow miserable because it is characterized by poverty as well as oppression, war, and violence. Citizens are almost always perceived to be under surveillance. Such thing happens because we have controls like corporate, bureaucratic, technological, and religious. Then last one is alternate history. There are stories that would need to take place in world in which one or more event would have to unfold differently from how they did in reality. Did you get confused after we had the subgenres? Did you feel that they overlap? Did you feel that they are somehow similar but also different? We are going to find out the answer to these questions right after this break.
FerNanDino Teens TV.
Welcome back, FerNanDino Teens. Did you really get confused when you came to know the subgenres of speculative fiction? Did you feel they overlap? Are they somehow similar and yet different? If you find yourself getting lost, then go back to the basics. Ask the question, could this world really exist according to our current knowledge of reality? There are a great deal of possibilities that leads to the confusions of many regarding what we define as speculative fiction. Does this mean that speculative fiction changes over time? Well, technology as well as our knowledge changes. To exemplify, in a book where technology of fiction used to be something that may not happen, but if it was written something like 20 or 30 years ago, it may not just be speculative today. Smith has a better answer to this one when he said, technology changes, knowledge grows, beliefs shift, and these are all things that inform our concept of what is possible. Does this mean there is no more reason for us to read speculative fiction? Is there no way to know what is unreal? There are three answers given to this question. 1. Story remains to be the basic unit of the human thought. To exemplify, your mother asked you why you were not able to submit your project on time. She asked you to explain. That is expository. It requires an expository answer. But what did you do? You told her the story covering that incident. So you gave a narration, a story per se. Second reason why we need to read speculative fiction, because truth is a matter of the imagination. Have you ever felt that sometimes reality is even stranger than fiction? G.K. Chesterton has the best answer for this question when he said, speculative fiction reconnects us with wonder and spirituality. I'm going to park this particular claim and actually relate it after we had taken up our sample speculative fiction. Let's go over to the elements of fiction that will be utilized in analyzing our story. 1. We have who are involved in the story. 2. Where did the story happen? 3. How were the incidents arranged? 4. In a nutshell, what does the writer want to tell the reader? 5. Who is telling the story? First, third point of view, or is it the omniscient in a speculative fiction where the narrator has to tell us what is in the mind and in the heart of the character? And lastly, style is diction, or the choice of words. You will be able to understand these as we employ them in the film that we are going to view as a sample speculative fiction work. Sit back and enjoy.
You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident. Nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. It was a painless death. The medics tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you were better off, trust me. And that's when you met me. What happened? Where am I? You died, I said, matter-of-factly. No point in mincing words. There was a truck, and it was skidding. Yes. I died. Yes. But don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place? Is this the afterlife? More or less. Are you God? Yes, I'm God. My kids? My wife? What about them? Will they be all right? That's what I like to see, I said. You just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man or possibly a woman. Some vague authority figure, maybe. Don't worry, I said. They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contemptuous of you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, so what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither. You'll be reincarnated. Ah. So the Hindus were right. All religions are right in their own way. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So, what's the point then? When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So, all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything. But there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And into lots of different lives. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically, time as you know it only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from? Oh, sure. I come from somewhere else. And there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but honestly, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So, what's the point of it all? I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind? You want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me? What about everyone else? There is no one else. In this universe, There's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth, all you, different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone. Now you're getting it. I'm every human being who ever lived. Or who will ever live, yes. I'm Abraham Lincoln. And you're John Wilkes Booth too. I'm Hitler, you said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus. And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why? Why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Wow, you said, incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, it's just an egg, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I sent you on your way.
FerNanDino Teens TV.
Welcome back, FerNanDino Teens. How did you find that particular animated film? Did I justify myself when I said there is fun in literature? Let's try to analyze exactly what Andy Weir is trying to communicate to us by going through the questions that we have for you. Take, for instance, who are involved in that particular story? Think of the man who had just died. He is our protagonist. And there was also the God whom he had encountered in the afterlife. Let's examine who the man is. He was someone who might have been a good father, but according to the God, it was only true because there was no much time for the children to grow contempt against their father. Was he a good husband? Well, what did the God say? The wife was actually relieved that he died, although she felt guilty about that. But our God also praised our dead man. Why? Because upon his death, the first question he asked the God was, if I am dead, what will happen to my children, to my wife? So he was given a very positive point for having asked such question. Let's see the next guide question that we have. Where did the story happen? You know what? Speculative fiction sometimes leaves us hanging. Why? We are being asked here where the story took place. Did you in any way find a particular place mentioned in our film? The only places I remember being given were somewhere or in a void. Actually, this is what makes the story speculative. Where do men go after he dies? It is something that we may not know about, so we remain asking a what-if question. What if there is indeed no hell nor heaven? So where would man go? after he dies. Let's entertain the third question. What point of view was employed by Andy Weir? Again, he was amazing in this aspect. You know why? There were pronouns like I and we. That means one among the characters was telling the story, and that is technically called as first-person point of view. But there are many instances also that the God was addressing someone using the pronoun you. So he employed the second person. He was communicating to someone directly. Did you not feel that somehow the you that the God was communicating to was you? That makes the film speculative in nature. Next question. What actually did you think did the writer share with us in as far as the real essence of life here on earth is? To this question, the God gave an explicit answer. He said, the real meaning of life, the very reason why I made this world is for you to grow matured. And then the dead man answered, for us men to grow matured. And then the God answered, no, just you. And then the man questioned, how could that be? And then God answered, there is no other in this universe except you. Do you mean I am Hitler? And all those he killed, the God said. You mean I am Jesus? And all those who followed him was what was given as an answer by the God. Bluntly said, therefore, it's like saying there is the application of the golden rule. The essence of life is to grow mature, and you are matured when you stop hurting others, because in doing so, you hurt yourself. You start being compassionate and caring to others because you do such thing to yourself. And according to the God in the story, that is maturity. Where does that leave the universe? The God said, the universe is just an egg. The justification of the title of the story. What makes it speculative? Let's go back to what I said earlier. Speculative fiction is an umbrella genre that encompasses both the supernatural and the futuristic. Said in a better way, Chesterton said speculative fiction is still necessary in this practical, pragmatic world because it reconnects us with the wonder and spirituality. Question, my dear learners, what makes you wonder amidst all the pains and the trials that the world is undergoing? Do you still find yourself smiling to nothing because you found something still wonderful? Do you still ask yourself why you need to choose goodness against evil because you are afraid as to where you are going to go to after this life? In that essence, we bridge the wonder with the spirituality. When we try our utmost to be the best that we can become, the answer of the God in this story was that, what is your real target? The answer given was, for you to grow matured. How will I know that I have grown more matured? The answer of the God was that, when you become like me. Let's repeat that one. You know that you had grown matured when you had become like God, a perfect being, the real essence of spirituality. Is there still a need to read speculative fiction? Well, if the egg of Andy Weir is one sample of what speculative fiction is, then I would say there are really great reasons why I would still want to read speculative fiction. With that, thank you. And here is the reference that had been used in this particular lesson. A blessed day to all of you.